Today on Hearts of Heroes.
We heard the Mayday call come through the radio.
A Coast Guard rescue swimmer tackles his very first mission, saving a boater from the thrashing sea.
This was his first search and rescue.
And it's going to be a big one.
Kind of yelling at the guy, get in the water, let's go. And that's kind of when I saw the white water coming.
Suddenly, he's pummeled by a 3-story high wave.
I don't think anybody could have imagined the size of the wave that came through.
I thought I had killed him.
Intense training and bravery will play a huge part in this rescue.
This rescue proves that guts and determination truly do make a hero. We've all heard the adage, there's a first time for everything. And believe it or not, this applies to emergency responders as well.
Every rescue has a first, whether it's a fire, flood, or in the case of our next story, one rookie's inaugural daring storm rescue.
Astoria, Oregon sits on the picturesque coast of the Pacific Northwest.
So where the Columbia River meets the Pacific.
The Columbia River has got one of the most dynamic water environments. The amount of water that comes in this direction, the way the water swells.
It creates this scenario with the Columbia River and the Pacific Ocean where the waves really start to stand up, and you're going to see some pretty gnarly conditions.
These turbulent waters have earned a foreboding nickname.
They call it the graveyard of the Pacific due to a lot of boats that have gone down out in the Columbia River bar. There's a long history of boats sinking and boats getting wrecked in these conditions.
But these hostile conditions also create the perfect environment for the United States Coast Guard's High-Risk Training Program, or HRT.
We give our students the most aggressive training elements that we could safely put them in.
This intense training takes place at the Coast Guard's Advanced Helicopter Rescue School, or AHRS, in Astoria. Over the course of a week, new pilots, flight mechanics, and rescue swimmers are pushed to their limits.
Here they're going to see heavy seas, breaking surf.
It's definitely a learning curve. Day one, we'll take them into some smaller stuff so they can kind of get their feet wet and get the feel for it.
We'll put them inside the caves, things that they've never seen before.
And then throughout the week, we slowly build things up and get harder and harder and bigger and bigger.
We'll put them upside the cliffs, and then we'll also simulate surge response scenarios, so we're practicing pulling people out of buildings or in the middle of the woods.
We're basically just teaching rescue techniques to build upon what you already learned, just to kind of give you more tools in your toolbox.
Students train aboard the Coast Guard's elite helicopter fleet.
We fly the MH-60 Tango Jayhawk helicopter. It's a variant of the Black Hawk. It's a great aircraft because it was developed for marine rescue.
But that's not all it can do.
The 60 is definitely an all-weather aircraft. Land on the snow, we'll land on the ice. It doesn't matter where we're at, the helicopter will definitely do its job. It's a workhorse.
This intense helicopter training might be intimidating for some, but for Petty Officer Branch Walton, it's a dream he's had since he was a child.
I started off when I was like a little kid. There was a guy in my church who was a swimmer, and I always thought he was pretty cool. My goal joining the Coast Guard was to be a rescue swimmer.
Soon after becoming a certified rescue swimmer with the Coast Guard, Branch was sent to Advanced Helicopter Rescue School.
I had just gotten qualified as a rescue swimmer maybe a few months before.
For an entire week, Branch was put through the grueling training process.
It was definitely eye-opening because I hadn't really been exposed to big seas like that before.
On the last day of the course, AHR instructors flew out over the Columbia Bar to search for a place to conduct the students' final training assignment.
The weather was really nasty that day. We flew out to the training area to try to evaluate the conditions. We had 4 instructors in the aircraft.
Flight mechanic Joseph Ivey and myself, along with the 2 pilots, Lieutenant Commander Wilson Rockman and Lieutenant Commander Trip Hayes.
When we got on scene, we found the limits to be outside of what we're allowed to train in. Within seconds of making that determination that we're going to head home is when we overheard Mayday on the radio.
This distress call would change Petty Officer Walton's life forever.
We didn't know if there was just a boat out there that was lost, but it ended up being so much more than that.
Coming up, a newly qualified rescue swimmer faces an unfathomable mission.
They were talking about 20-foot plus waves out there. The guy with the radio is like, hey, one of you guys might need to go out.
But first, some inspiration for those of you looking for ways to give back to those who protect our country every day.
The men and women of the United States Armed Forces are committed to protecting our nation in times of war and peace. There are many ways we can give thanks to the dedicated veterans, many of whom really need our support.
Offer to give a disabled veteran a ride, whether to the doctor or even the market. Sponsor a companion dog for those who have suffered from PTSD. Encourage a vet to share their story. You'll be surprised at the life lessons you can learn from those who have seen it all.
And of course, never forget to say thank you. This simple gesture will help these men and women feel appreciated for their selfless acts of duty.
On the final day of the Coast Guard's high-risk training program, instructors flew out over the Pacific to scout conditions for the students' graduating assignment.
When we got on scene, what we saw was waves that were pushing just over 35 feet.
We deemed it that it was not safe to actually train with our students that day.
It was pretty much exactly at the same point we heard the Mayday call. Our training has now potentially turned into a search and rescue mission.
But the instructor crew in the chopper was missing one important person, a rescue swimmer.
We got on the radio and said, hey, Cape D pad, we're coming in, we need a rescue swimmer for this case.
I was sitting there listening to music, and then one of the senior rescue swimmers said, hey, new guys, step up, who wants to go?
The students found an unconventional way to decide who would take the assignment.
We played rock, paper, scissors on who got to go.
Branch won the game, and with that, he got prepped for his mission.
I went and grabbed my flight helmet, and they drove me out to the helicopter.
We landed, Branch came out, he was ready to go, hopped in the aircraft, and we took off.
We get out there, begin our search. During this time, 2 47-foot motor lifeboats from the National Motor Lifeboat School are making their way across the bar to also try to go to this last known position.
We were out about to do training and we get a call on the radio for a Mayday. Because we were the only boats that were out there at the time, we decided to go and try to find that boat.
They radioed over to us. They did find the boat. We flew over the top of it. Nobody was on the boat. We hovered around trying to see if anybody was actually on it. And after about 5 minutes, we did actually see a hand come out of the window.
Members of the Motor Lifeboat School tried in vain to reach the distressed person in the boat. Meanwhile, up in the helicopter, Branch told his instructor something that took them all by surprise.
This is my first case, just so you know.
I just looked over at him and just gave him a smack on the side of the helmet and said, it's final exam time.
And what he didn't learn that week, he was about to learn real quick.
Coming up.
I was yelling at the guy, like, come on, let's get in the water, let's go.
And by that time, that wave is there.
And that's when I saw the white water coming.
But first, a tip for how you can help first responders in case of an emergency.
There are nearly 33 million emergencies reported through 911 dispatchers each year.
If you see smoke or fire, report it to 911. We rely on you to be our eyes and ears out there. Remember to give the operator important information like how many victims need help and the exact address or location. This helps us prepare the necessary personnel and equipment.
911 is equipped to handle every type of call, including TTY for the hearing and speech impaired, and translation services. 911, your safety is just a phone call away.
Instructors from the Advanced Helicopter Rescue School in Astoria, Oregon, were scouting a deep ocean training location when they responded to a mayday call. But to do that emergency rescue, they had to pick up one very important crew member called a rescue swimmer.
After picking up rookie rescue swimmer Branch Walton, the crew flew to the scene. But with the boat thrashed by mammoth waves, they knew time was not on their side.
The Coast Guard motor lifeboats were on scene, and we're trying to figure out how can we help this person on board this boat.
In these conditions, with 2 boats on scene, our quick risk analysis said the motor lifeboats are the safer option in this case. So we elected to back off and just hold a hover, so kind of in a position to act in an emergency if need be.
The distressed boat passenger didn't have a life vest, and he had lost power, so there was no way to communicate with him.
I saw them attempt to pass over a radio, and they had lost the radio. After that, they had passed over a life jacket, which the guy was able to get.
Those guys are definitely masters of their craft at what they were doing. Being able to see just the precision of them trying to throw the life jackets and the ropes to them was amazing.
The motor lifeboat team made another attempt to throw the passenger a radio.
While they were trying to deliver the radio, the lines had snapped. Once the final line snapped, it was definitely time for another course of action, because it was definitely getting rougher out there.
It was brought up that they were going to use one of the people on their vessel as a surface swimmer.
But the waves were too big for them to do that.
Time is of the essence.
The boat was beyond its limits. The seas were way too big for it. Sooner or later, a wave was going to catch up with this thing.
Ultimately, we knew we had the best asset, which was Branch.
But before they'd put Branch in those monstrous waves, they made sure to follow Coast Guard protocol and have a solid attack plan.
There's a lot of briefing going on. Every safety measure that we possibly could have is put into place.
We really looked at the boat, found the hazards with the boat. We found the direction of drift of the boat, because what we didn't want is for the boat to be pushed on top of Branch.
I was nervous and calm at the same time, but it was definitely this is what I've been training for. This is about to happen.
With that, it was time for Branch's first rescue mission.
I got lowered down to the water. And then I started swimming over to the boat. Once I reached the boat, I was kind of yelling at the guy, like, come on, let's get in the water, let's go. At which he pointed to his right.
You can start to see that wave stand up. And I was like, Will, we got to tell him. And Will said, what do you want me to tell him? And then by that time, that wave is there.
Coming up.
The boat rolled over, and then it was whitewash and debris for about 100 yards.
I thought I killed Branch. My decisions had killed him.
Petty Officer Branch Walton was attempting his first ever high-risk water rescue when suddenly he was staring into a mountainous rogue wave.
Off in the distance, there's a set of waves, and the second wave in that string looked like it was all the same size as the vessel.
It's one of those times when, things start to slow down.
I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I don't think anybody could have imagined the size of the wave that came through. There was not a lot we could do. It built and it broke and took that boat out like it was a bath toy.
It was whitewash and debris from the vessel for about 100 yards.
There was a period of time where I thought I killed Branch, and my decisions leading up to that point had killed him.
But for these seasoned rescuers, there was no time to dwell on emotions.
When we're in those situations, we're just focused on taking care of business. This boat capsized. What do we need to do?
My response was an immediate cyclic back as quick as I could, make the helicopter match the rate of the boat as it tumbled, because my hope was when all of the violent motion stopped, we would have Branch in the same spot that we dropped him off.
In those terrifying moments, the crew had no idea if Branch had survived. But in the last second, this young swimmer's training told him to dive under the wave.
When I came up from the wave, it was frightening. I came up and I was looking for the boat, and then the boat was kind of everywhere. There was like debris everywhere. But the training all week kicked in. I was able to calm myself back down.
Moments later, the crew spotted Branch in the water.
Immediately, our flight mechanic said, "There's Branch." All I could say was, "Begin the hoist. I want you to send that hook down to him right now."
The plan now was to get Branch out of this dangerous situation.
I moved the helicopter over where Branch was. Joe finished giving me the directional commands to get us right over top of Branch, and he dropped the hook right in Branch's hand.
I knew the guy was on the boat when that wave hit. As I was reaching up for the rescue hook, I saw his head pop up.
When Branch saw that there was a survivor still in the water, he knew he had a mission to complete.
Branch clipped in, got about 5 feet above the water, and he immediately pointed straight at the survivor. And when a swimmer gives you a directional command, that's Branch telling us where he wants to go.
So I picked him up out of the water. I said, I'm just moving him straight over to the survivor.
They just took me over right to him.
Branch went right back down in the water and then started working with the survivor.
Branch had to get the man into the rescue sling as quickly yet safely as possible.
I was trying to move quickly, but I was definitely being cautious because I didn't want to hook him up wrong.
What we don't want to do is rush that and potentially have the survivor exit the sling during the recovery.
Once we did have the go-ahead from Branch, we picked both of them up out of the water.
As he's coming up, it's this big breath of fresh air and a relief that we got them back safely. Seeing stuff like that, you never know what the outcome is, but that was the absolute best case scenario.
It was exciting. Kyle looked at me with a big grin on his face, gave me a double high five. It was a cool moment for sure.
With their mission complete, the crew headed back to base.
They took the survivor and were able to provide him medical care. Then you can let all that adrenaline dump, feel good about what you accomplished.
I'll tell you, the first thing I did was walk over and hug Branch. And I told him I was very proud of what he had just done.
For his last day of advanced rescue training, Branch was definitely given the ultimate final exam. And it's safe to say, he passed with flying colors.
That's a pretty traumatic, once-in-a-lifetime kind of event for Branch. And it's just a testament to how good of a person and how good of a swimmer he's going to be for this organization.
I think I just give him big hugs. Yeah, told him I was proud of him. It makes a difference. It really does. It brings people back home to their families. And I think that's worth the cause.
I'm just very thankful that I was given that opportunity to go do that. But it's definitely, looking back, it's a cool moment. It's something I'll remember for a long time.
Branch Walton had a dream to be a U.S. Coast Guard rescue swimmer, and with training and drive, he made that dream come true.
And it just goes to show you, with hard work, determination, and guts, anyone can achieve their goals. Thanks so much for spending some time with us today. We'll see you next time on Hearts of Heroes.